Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Haunted Mirror. Holly Arnold had always loved antiques. Growing up in the picturesque Isle of Wight, she spent her childhood exploring quaint shops and markets. Now, as an adult, she turned her passion into a business, curating unique pieces from across the island for her small boutique, Timeless Finds. It was on one of these treasure hunts that she came across the mirror. It stood in the corner of an old shop, hidden behind layers of dust and neglect. Its frame was intricately carved wood, darkened with age, curling into spirals and vines that seemed to shift as the light caught them. The glass itself was flawless despite its age, with a cold gleam that drew Holly in. It was mesmerizing. I've never seen anything quite like it. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with thin, knowing eyes, approached her with a peculiar smile. That mirror has a history. People say it shows more than just a reflection. Some say it's cursed. Holly laughed it off. I'll take it. The mirror fit perfectly in her bedroom, the ornate frame contrasting beautifully with the clean, modern lines of her decor. That night, as Holly lay in bed, the moonlight filtered through the window, casting an ethereal glow over the room. The mirror, catching the light, seemed to shimmer, almost as if it were alive. But she was too tired to pay attention, exhaustion from the day's work pulling her into sleep. It wasn't until the next morning that Holly noticed something odd. As she got ready, she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair, but something about her reflection seemed off. It mimicked her movements perfectly, yet there was a strange, almost imperceptible delay. And the eyes. Her reflection's eyes seemed darker, colder, as though they belonged to someone else. She leaned closer, inspecting the glass, but everything looked normal again. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, Holly continued with her day, blaming her imagination for playing tricks on her. Days passed, and the oddities became more frequent. At night, she would catch glimpses of movement in the corner of her eye, but when she looked directly at the mirror, nothing was amiss. Other times, she felt as though she were being watched not from the room, but from within the mirror itself. Her reflection seemed more vibrant, more alert, as if it were studying her. One evening, after an exhausting day at the shop, Holly collapsed onto her bed, staring at the mirror. The room was bathed in the soft glow of a nearby lamp, casting long shadows. Her reflection was there, staring back at her as always. But something was wrong. Its expression was no longer her own. Holly sat up slowly, her breath catching in her throat as she realized her reflection was smiling a wicked, twisted grin that she hadn't made. She scrambled to her feet, backing away from the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. "What the hell?" she whispered. The smile on her reflection widened, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. Slowly, it raised a hand, waving at her mockingly. Holly's own hand remained at her side, frozen with fear. Holly whispered, her voice barely audible. The reflection mouthed words, though no sound came through the glass. But Holly could read the lips. "I am you." She bolted from the room, slamming the door behind her, her mind racing. She tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was stress, lack of sleep, anything but the alternative. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. Over the next few days, Holly avoided the mirror as much as possible, covering it with a sheet, hoping to block out whatever malevolent presence lurked within. But the strange occurrences continued. The sheet would be mysteriously pulled down when she wasn't looking. At night, she could hear faint whispers, too quiet to understand, but enough to send chills down her spine. Then one night it happened. Holly awoke to the feeling of someone standing over her. She shot up in bed, her eyes adjusting to the darkness, and there, at the foot of her bed, stood her reflection, no longer confined to the mirror. It was her, but twisted eyes dark as voids, the grin wide and unnatural. Her double moved closer, its movements smooth and unnatural, like a marionette on invisible strings. Holly screamed, scrambling to the edge of her bed, but her double was faster. It lunged forward, its hands cold as death wrapping around her throat. Holly struggled, her vision blurring as the pressure increased, and in that moment she realized the horrifying truth: the reflection wanted to take her place. With a surge of adrenaline, Holly kicked out, knocking the creature back. She dashed for the door, her heart hammering in her chest. but when she reached for the handle, her fingers slipped through it. She looked down at her hands, pale, transparent. "No," she gasped. Inside the glass, her reflection stood, grinning triumphantly. It was no longer a reflection. It was her. And Holly was on the other side, trapped in the mirror's cold glass prison. She pounded on the glass, screaming, but no sound came. The new Holly, the twisted, malevolent version, smirked, running her fingers through her hair, perfectly mimicking the real Holly's old movements. The days that followed were a waking nightmare. Holly watched helplessly from inside the mirror as her doppelganger lived her life. It moved through her days with sinister intent, interacting with friends, customers, and neighbors, all of whom had no idea they were dealing with an impostor. Worse still, it began to manipulate those around her, subtly sowing discord, turning people against one another. Friendships fractured, relationships crumbled, and Holly could do nothing but watch, powerless. As the weeks passed, Holly realized that this was the mirror's curse. It didn't just trap people, it replaced them with twisted versions of themselves, versions that thrived on chaos and misery. She was doomed to spend eternity in the mirror, watching her life be destroyed by the sinister reflection that had taken her place. But even worse than that was the knowledge that someday someone else would find the mirror. And when they did, it would all happen again. For now, Holly could only wait, hoping that someone would see through the false Holly. But deep down, she knew the truth. No one ever would. Months passed, and Holly's torment only deepened. From within the mirror, she watched as her doppelganger dismantled her life piece by piece. Friends stopped visiting her, put off by her cold demeanor and manipulative actions. Customers began to avoid her shop, complaining about the strange, oppressive atmosphere that had taken over timeless finds. Even the quaint charm of the Isle of Wight, with its rolling hills and serene beaches, began to feel tainted and twisted, like everything else in Holly's life. But as much as Holly hated her reflection for what it had done, she feared something far worse, the realization that it was becoming her. The doppelganger didn't just mimic her mannerisms, it was slowly perfecting them. It had learned her speech patterns, her quirks, even her memories. The more time passed, the harder it became to distinguish the reflection from who Holly had once been. And inside the mirror, Holly felt herself unraveling. Her once solid form became more ethereal, less like the person she remembered. Her voice was a mere whisper within the cold glass, her fists pounding against the mirror, producing no sound. It was as though the very essence of her identity was fading, piece by piece, stolen by the thing that wore her face. One rainy evening, Holly's reflection did something she'd been dreading. It invited someone over. Oliver, her best friend from childhood, someone she had confided in countless times, had always been there for her. Now, as Holly watched from the other side of the mirror, she saw the reflection greet him with a smile she knew was meant to deceive. "Oliver," the reflection purred. "It's been too long." Oliver hesitated at the doorway. "You've been distant lately. Holly, are you okay? The people are worried about you. I've just been overwhelmed," the doppelganger replied smoothly. "But I'm fine now. Why don't you come in? We can talk, just like old times." From the mirror, Holly screamed silently. "No, don't go in. That's not me." But Oliver, unaware of the danger, stepped into the house. The conversation started innocuously enough. Her reflection played the part perfectly, asking about Oliver's life, reminiscing about their childhood adventures across the island. But Holly could see the darkness lurking just beneath the surface, the cold malice in the doppelganger's eyes. It was waiting for the perfect moment. As the rain drummed steadily outside, the reflection steered the conversation in a dangerous direction. "Do you ever think about how things could have been different?" Oliver asked. Oliver frowned. "What do you mean? I mean, what if you hadn't left? What if we had stayed close all these years?" The reflection's voice was soft, almost seductive, but Holly could see the manipulation in every word. It was trying to create doubt, to drive a wedge between them. Oliver's unease grew. "Holly, I don't think," but before he could finish, the doppelganger stood up abruptly. Its eyes flashed with anger, and for the first time, Oliver seemed to notice the strange, otherworldly shift in its demeanor. "Why did you leave me?" "Oliver," it snarled. "Why did you abandon me when I needed you most?" Oliver stood, backing away. "What are you talking about? I didn't abandon you, We just grew apart. The life happens. The reflection's face contorted, its grin widening in a grotesque parody of human expression. You left me, just like everyone else, but I won't be abandoned again. As the doppelganger moved toward him, its body twisting unnaturally. Finally, he saw the thing before him wasn't Holly. Holly, he gasped. What are you? The reflection lunged, its hands seizing Oliver's throat with an inhuman strength. He struggled, gasping for breath, his eyes pleading for mercy, but the doppelganger only grinned wider, relishing in his fear. From the mirror, Holly watched in helpless agony, her voice lost in the void. She beat against the glass, screaming silently, "Stop. Please stop." But the doppelganger's face remained twisted in sadistic delight as it tightened its grip. With one final, sickening crack, Oliver's body went limp, collapsing to the floor in a heap. The reflection stood over him, panting heavily, before it turned to look directly into the mirror, directly at Holly. Its smile widened, blood dripping from its hands, and for the first time, Holly felt the full weight of her horror. This wasn't just about stealing her life. It was about destruction, chaos, and death. The reflection wasn't satisfied with taking her place, it wanted to obliterate everything she loved. Days turned into weeks. The body was disposed of, and the reflection continued its reign of terror, slowly unraveling Holly's carefully constructed world. One by one, those closest to her fell victim to its manipulations or met tragic fates, all while Holly could do nothing but watch from the mirror. And then, one cold, foggy morning, the mirror shop reappeared. An older woman entered Holly's now abandoned shop, drawn by the rumors of strange happenings. The woman's gaze fell on the mirror, still standing in the corner, its ornate frame as alluring as ever. Holly's heart sank as she watched the woman approach, her hand reaching out to touch the smooth glass surface. She wanted to scream, to warn her, but the reflection in the mirror, now fully formed and whole, smiled from the other side, its eyes glinting with anticipation. The woman paused, then murmured to herself, "What a beautiful mirror," and Holly knew, with a deep, soul-crushing certainty, that it was about to begin again. In that moment, Holly finally understood the true horror of the mirror's curse. It wasn't just a prison for her, nor was it satisfied with stealing one life. It was hungry, insatiable, and every soul it claimed was another reflection lost, another life devoured by the sinister force that lurked within. As the woman lifted the mirror to take it home, Holly's last hope slipped away. She was no longer Holly Arnold. She was nothing but a reflection, trapped forever in the cold, lifeless glass, waiting for the next victim to fall into the haunted mirror's grasp. The cycle would never end. And from inside the glass, Holly's doppelganger smiled. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.